a battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. And whether we want to admit it or not, there are people in our lives who do not walk in the light. And whether we want to admit it or not, there is a battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. And whether we want to admit it or not, there are people in our lives who do not walk in the light. They carry with them something destructive, something deceptive, something that slowly drains the joy and purpose from those around them. There are those who manipulate with smooth words, but their hearts are filled with deceit. They smile, yet their intentions are dark. They pretend to support you, but inside they want to see you fall. They are envious when you succeed, silent when you struggle, and satisfied when you suffer. These individuals plant seeds of doubt, whisper words of discouragement, and turn hearts against one another. Watch out for the one who always causes division, the one who stirs up strife wherever they go. They twist words, create confusion, and drive wedges between friends, family, and even within the church. Where there should be peace, they bring tension. Where there should be unity, they create hostility. This is not the way of the Lord. Beware of those who lie without shame, who distort truth for their own benefit. They manipulate reality, make excuses for their behavior, and never take responsibility for the pain they cause. Their words sound sweet, but they are like poison to the soul. Have you ever met someone who takes pleasure in the suffering of others? They lack empathy, showing no remorse for the harm they inflict. Their hearts are hardened, their conscience seared. They can look upon pain and remain unmoved, their laughter mocking the tears of the innocent. And there are those who lead others into darkness. They disguise evil as good, justifying wrong as if it were right. They encourage sin, belittle righteousness, and mock those who seek truth. They do not want to see you walk in the light. They want you to stumble in the darkness with them. Then there are those who take advantage of kindness, who drain the energy and resources of others without giving anything in return. They prey on goodwill, always taking, never giving. No matter how much love, patience, and grace you extend, it is never enough. They do not seek relationships. They seek control. Lastly, there are those who are consumed with pride. They cannot stand correction, refuse to admit wrong, and seek to elevate themselves at any cost. Their arrogance blinds them to wisdom, and their stubbornness leads them away from truth. They reject counsel, despise humility, and seek only to be served rather than to serve. My friends, if you see these signs in someone around you, do not be deceived. Do not let them pull you away from the path of righteousness. The Lord calls us to be discerning, to be wise, to guard our hearts and our minds. We are to love others, yes, but we are not to entertain evil. We are to pray for those who walk in darkness, but we must not follow them into it. There is a time to stand firm. There is a time to separate from those who seek to destroy. There is a time to call upon the name of the Lord, to ask for His guidance, His strength, and His protection. Do not be afraid, for the light of God is greater than any darkness. Walk in truth, walk in righteousness, and above all, walk in the love and power of the one who has overcome the world. Discernment is one of the most powerful tools a person can possess, yet it is often overlooked or underestimated. In a world where deception is common and manipulation is widespread, the ability to see beyond appearances and recognize the true nature of people and situations is not just important, it is essential. Many individuals walk through life unaware of the subtle dangers around them, trusting too easily, ignoring warning signs, and allowing harmful influences to take root in their lives. But discernment is a gift that can protect, guide, and strengthen those who cultivate it. There are people who disguise themselves as friends, supporters, or well-wishers, but deep down their motives are not pure. They speak with kindness, but their hearts are full of envy. They offer help, but their goal is control. They claim to be on your side, but secretly they delight in your struggles and setbacks. Without discernment, it is easy to fall victim to their deception, believing that their words and actions are genuine, when, in reality, they are working against you. A discerning heart recognizes that not everything that looks good is good. Evil does not always come dressed in darkness. Sometimes it presents itself in the form of flattery, generosity, or even false wisdom. The enemy knows that blatant deception is easy to detect, so he disguises his work in ways that seem harmless or even beneficial. People with hidden agendas will use charm, sympathy, and even religious language to manipulate others into trusting them. But discernment cuts through the surface and sees the truth beneath. One of the most dangerous aspects of lacking discernment is the tendency to excuse toxic behavior. When someone constantly causes division, spreads lies, or drains your energy, there is always a temptation to overlook their actions, justify their behavior, or give them endless chances. Love and forgiveness are important, but they should not come at the cost of wisdom. Discernment helps distinguish between those who make mistakes but are willing to change, and those who continually choose to walk in darkness. People who lack discernment often find themselves trapped in unhealthy relationships, manipulated by those who take advantage of their kindness. They give too much, tolerate too much, and ignore the warnings that something is not right. They confuse love with blind loyalty and patience with passivity. But true love does not enable harm, and true wisdom does not ignore reality. To have discernment is to recognize when someone is leading you away from your purpose, draining your energy, or filling your life with confusion and strife. There are also those who speak with authority, but lead others astray. They use persuasive words, convincing arguments, and emotional manipulation to make their lies seem like truth. They twist reality to fit their own agenda, and without discernment, their influence can be powerful. The ability to recognize falsehood, no matter how well packaged it may be, is what separates those who stand firm in truth from those who are easily swayed by deception. Discernment is not just about recognizing the evil in others. It is also about recognizing our own weaknesses. Many times, people allow themselves to be deceived because they want to believe something that aligns with their desires, fears, or insecurities. They ignore red flags because facing the truth is uncomfortable. They surround themselves with the wrong people because they fear loneliness. But discernment requires honesty, not just with others, but with ourselves. It requires a willingness to face uncomfortable truths, to admit when we have been misled, and to correct our course before further damage is done. Cultivating discernment requires wisdom, experience, and often prayer. It is not something that comes instantly, but it develops over time as we learn from past mistakes and seek truth with sincerity. The more we surround ourselves with truth, the easier it becomes to recognize falsehood. The more we align ourselves with what is good, the more obvious evil becomes. The more we seek wisdom, the less likely we are to be deceived. Discernment is not about suspicion or paranoia. It is about clarity. It is about seeing things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It is about making decisions that protect our peace, our faith, and our purpose. It is about walking in wisdom rather than blindly trusting in appearances. Those who develop discernment will find themselves stronger, freer, and more in control of their lives. They will be able to navigate relationships with wisdom, avoid unnecessary pain, and stand firm in the truth, no matter how deceptive the world around them may be. Evil rarely announces itself openly. It does not always come in the form of obvious darkness, loud threats, or blatant wickedness. Instead, it works in subtle ways, slipping into lives unnoticed, often disguised as something good, harmless, or even necessary. Many people imagine evil as something distant, something they can clearly identify and avoid. But in reality, it operates in deception, slowly weaving its way into thoughts, actions, and relationships before its damage is fully realized. It does not destroy in an instant. It erodes over time. One of the greatest dangers of evil is its ability to blend in. It does not always look menacing. It can wear the face of a trusted friend, a respected leader, or even a loved one. It can appear in words that sound helpful but are laced with manipulation. It can be found in flattery that seeks control rather than encouragement. It can even masquerade as wisdom, leading people away from truth while convincing them they are on the right path. The subtlety of evil makes it all the more dangerous, because by the time people recognize it, they are often already entangled in its web. It begins with small compromises, tiny decisions that seem insignificant at first, a little dishonesty here, a small indulgence there, a moment of ignoring what is right in favor of what is easy. These small steps seem harmless, but they open the door for greater corruption. Evil rarely demands full surrender immediately. Instead, it lures its victims one small step at a time. A person does not become deceitful overnight, nor does a relationship become toxic in an instant. These things develop slowly, as tiny cracks in a foundation that, left unaddressed, eventually cause the entire structure to collapse. One of the most effective strategies of evil is to twist the truth. Instead of outright lies, it offers distortions, half-truths that seem believable. It redefines right and wrong, making excuses for behaviors that once seemed unacceptable. It makes selfishness look like self-care, pride look like confidence, and manipulation look like persuasion. It convinces people that small acts of wrongdoing are justified by their circumstances. And once these distortions are accepted, they become the new normal, leading people further away from what is good. Evil also thrives in secrecy. It encourages silence, telling its victims to keep quiet, to tolerate mistreatment, to ignore their instincts when something feels wrong. It convinces people that speaking up will only make things worse, that no one will believe them, that they are overreacting. This silence allows it to grow unchecked. The longer it remains hidden, the stronger it becomes. And when people finally realize the extent of its damage, they often feel trapped, as if they have no way out. Another tactic of evil is to create confusion. It clouds judgment, making people doubt their own perceptions. It introduces chaos where there should be clarity, causing division in families, friendships, and communities. It turns people against one another through misunderstandings and miscommunications. It keeps people so distracted by unnecessary conflict that they fail to recognize the real source of the problem. Confusion is one of its greatest weapons because when people are uncertain, they are easier to manipulate. Evil also disguises itself in the form of pleasure. It offers what seems enjoyable in the moment, but comes with consequences that are often ignored until it is too late. It entices people with quick rewards, temporary satisfaction, and easy solutions. But these pleasures are deceptive. They offer nothing lasting, only a deeper emptiness in the end. What starts as excitement turns into regret. What begins as an escape turns into captivity. And what appears to be harmless fun can lead to destruction. Perhaps the most painful part of encountering evil is realizing that it often works through people. Not everyone who causes harm does so intentionally, but there are those whose hearts are filled with darkness, who take pleasure in the suffering of others, who manipulate, deceive, and destroy without remorse. These individuals drain the energy and peace from those around them, using others for their own gain, leaving behind pain and brokenness. They are not always easy to recognize because they can be charming, persuasive, and even appear caring. But their actions over time reveal the truth. The damage caused by evil is often not seen immediately. It moves quietly, making slow but steady progress. Relationships that were once filled with trust become strained and distant. A person who was once joyful and confident begins to feel anxious and uncertain. A heart that was once full of hope becomes weighed down by bitterness and disappointment. And all the while, the true cause of this destruction remains hidden, convincing people that the problem is something else entirely. Recognizing evil in its early stages is critical. The longer it is allowed to remain, the deeper its roots grow. The more it is tolerated, the harder it becomes to remove. It must be exposed before it can be defeated. It must be called out for what it is, rather than excused or ignored. It cannot be reasoned with or bargained with. It only loses its power when it is confronted with truth. Those who fail to recognize its subtlety often find themselves in situations they never imagined, wondering how things could have gone so wrong. But those who remain vigilant, who choose to see clearly rather than be deceived, will not be so easily led astray. Guarding your heart and mind is one of the most important things a person can do in life. Everything we do, every decision we make, and every relationship we engage in is influenced by what we allow into our hearts and minds. The world is filled with distractions, temptations, and influences that seek to pull people away from truth, peace, and purpose. Without careful attention, negativity, fear, and deception can take root, shaping the way we think and act without us even realizing it. What we allow to dwell within us will eventually define who we become. The heart is the center of emotions, desires, and affections. It is where love, joy, and faith reside, but it is also where pain, bitterness, and resentment can grow if left unguarded. Many people go through life unaware of how much they have allowed the world to shape their hearts. They absorb the negativity around them, allowing anger and frustration to take hold. They dwell on past hurts, allowing unforgiveness to harden their hearts. They open themselves to toxic relationships, allowing others to dictate their worth and happiness. But the heart is precious and must be protected, for whatever fills the heart will eventually overflow into actions and words. The mind is just as important to God. It is where thoughts are formed, where decisions are made, and where battles are won or lost. A person's entire perspective on life is shaped by the thoughts they entertain. If the mind is constantly filled with fear, doubt, and insecurity, those thoughts will dictate how a person lives. If the mind is consumed with greed, jealousy, or pride, it will lead to actions that hurt both the individual and those around them. The mind is powerful, but it is also vulnerable. Without careful attention, it can be influenced by deception, false teachings, and the pressures of society. Guarding the heart and mind requires wisdom and discipline. It means being selective about what we listen to, what we watch, and who we allow to speak into our lives. The world is filled with voices, each one trying to shape the way people think and feel. Some voices bring encouragement and truth, but many bring confusion, discouragement, and deception. Social media, entertainment, and even personal relationships can all have a profound impact on the condition of the heart and mind. If negativity, immorality, or falsehood is constantly consumed, it will begin to shape perspectives and decisions in ways that lead away from truth and peace. It is important to be mindful of the company we keep. The people we surround ourselves with have a significant influence on our thoughts and emotions. Some relationships bring encouragement, wisdom, and strength, while others drain, manipulate, or lead in the wrong direction. A guarded heart does not mean shutting people out, but it does mean being careful about who is given access to influence emotions and thoughts. Not everyone who enters our lives comes with good intentions. Some bring negativity, deceit, or even harm. Recognizing the difference between relationships that build up and those that tear down is a vital part of guarding both the heart and mind. Guarding the heart and mind also means being aware of the subtle ways the world can shift perspectives. The values and morals promoted in today's society often conflict with what is truly right and good. What was once considered unacceptable has now become normal, and what was once respected has now been dismissed as outdated. Without discernment, It is easy to be swayed by cultural trends, media narratives, and popular opinions. But truth does not change based on what is convenient or widely accepted. A strong heart and mind remain anchored in what is good and right, regardless of what the world promotes. One of the greatest dangers of an unguarded heart and mind is the slow erosion of faith and hope. Many people start out with confidence, joy, and a clear sense of purpose. But over time, they become weighed down by doubt, discouragement, and confusion. They allow negative experiences to shape their beliefs, setbacks to define their future, and failures to convince them that they are not worthy of success or happiness. When the heart and mind are not protected, they become vulnerable to lies that steal joy, purpose, and peace. Guarding the heart and mind does not mean living in fear or isolation. It is not about avoiding every challenge or hiding from the world. Instead, it is about being intentional with what is allowed to take root within. It is about filling the heart and mind with truth, surrounding oneself with wisdom, and choosing to focus on what brings life rather than what brings destruction. It requires discipline, but it leads to strength. It requires effort. Their power will rise like rain. It will flood ever and honor. And with every pain, there comes a time in life when a person must make a choice between what is right and what is easy, between truth and deception, between light and darkness. Darkness has a way of creeping into life unnoticed, taking root in the form of toxic relationships, harmful habits, and deceptive influences. At first, it may seem harmless, something that can be controlled or managed. But the longer it is tolerated, the stronger its grip becomes. It begins to shape thoughts, decisions, and even identity. It drains energy, steals peace, and replaces clarity with confusion. The only way to walk in freedom is to separate from the things that lead to destruction. Darkness disguises itself well. It does not always come in the form of obvious evil. It can present itself as a relationship that feels familiar but is secretly harmful. It can come as entertainment that seems enjoyable but slowly erodes values. It can appear in habits that provide temporary comfort but ultimately lead to regret. Darkness is subtle, but its effects are undeniable. It weighs on the soul, clouding judgment and making it harder to distinguish right from wrong. It replaces joy with heaviness, leaving a person feeling drained and distant from their true purpose. One of the most challenging aspects of separating from darkness is recognizing its presence. Many people hold on to toxic situations because they have become comfortable with them. They make excuses for harmful relationships, convincing themselves that things will change. They justify bad habits, telling themselves they are in control. They ignore warning signs, refusing to acknowledge the damage being done. But ignoring darkness does not make it go away. It only allows it to grow stronger. The first step to freedom is the willingness to see things as they truly are. Separation from darkness often requires walking away from people who do not have good intentions. Not everyone who enters life is meant to stay. Some relationships bring encouragement and growth, while others bring manipulation and destruction. There are those who drain energy, who bring constant negativity, who twist the truth for their own benefit. They may claim to care, but their actions reveal otherwise. These relationships must be examined carefully. If someone continually brings pain, confusion, or temptation, it may be time to create distance. This is not about hatred or bitterness. It is about protecting peace and purpose. Walking away from darkness also means changing what is allowed into the heart and mind. Many people live in a constant state of anxiety, anger, or sadness because of what they consume daily. The words they listen to, the media they engage with, and the environments they expose themselves to all have an impact. If the majority of what fills the mind is negative, it will be nearly impossible to experience true peace. Separating from darkness means being intentional about what is allowed to influence thoughts and emotions. It means choosing to engage with things that bring clarity, wisdom, and encouragement, rather than those that create confusion and chaos. There is often fear in letting go of what is familiar. Even when something is harmful, there is a certain comfort in what is known. Many people remain in destructive situations because they fear the unknown. They wonder if they will be alone, if they will regret their decision, if they will be able to move forward. But nothing good comes from staying connected to something that is causing harm. Growth requires change. Freedom requires letting go. There is greater peace in walking away from what is destructive than in holding on out of fear. Separating from darkness is not always easy. It may mean making difficult decisions, facing uncomfortable truths, and enduring temporary loneliness. But in the end, it is always worth it. Life was never meant to be lived in bondage to things that steal joy and purpose. There is a better way. There is freedom in choosing light over darkness, truth over deception, and peace over chaos. The moment a person decides to walk away from what is holding them back, they begin to step into the life they were truly meant to live. Darkness is a reality in this world, and it takes many forms. It appears in times of fear, in moments of despair, in the confusion that clouds judgment, and in the struggles that weigh down the soul. It exists in the deception that misleads, in the hatred that divides, and in the brokenness that leaves people feeling lost and alone. It can be overwhelming, creeping into thoughts, relationships, and circumstances, attempting to suffocate hope and silence truth. But no matter how deep the darkness, no matter how heavy the burden, it is never greater than the light of God. His light is eternal, unshaken, and undefeatable. When His presence enters any situation, darkness has no choice but to flee. Light does not struggle against darkness, it overcomes it instantly. Even the smallest flame can drive away the deepest night. When God's light shines, confusion turns into clarity, despair is replaced with hope, and fear gives way to peace. Darkness cannot stand in His presence. The lies that once seemed powerful are exposed for what they are. The burdens that once held unbearable are lifted. The chains that once held a person captive are broken. There is no force of darkness strong enough to stand against the power of God's light. The world often promotes darkness as if it is permanent, as if it has the final say. People are led to believe that their struggles will never end, that their failures define them, and that their pain is too great to heal. But this is not true. The enemy wants people to feel trapped, to believe that there is no way out, to accept defeat as their destiny. But God's light exposes the lies. It reveals that there is always a way forward, always a purpose, always hope. What seems impossible in the shadows becomes possible in the light. God's light does not just expose the darkness, it transforms everything it touches. It does not simply reveal the brokenness in a person's life, it heals it. It does not just uncover the wounds, it restores what was lost. It does not only show the wrong path, it leads to the right one. Many people fear stepping into the light because they are afraid of what it will reveal. They worry that their past, their mistakes, and their weaknesses will be laid bare. But God's light is not meant to bring shame. It is meant to bring redemption. It does not destroy, it rebuilds. It does not condemn, it saves. Darkness often tries to convince people that it is stronger. It whispers that the pain will never end, that hope is foolish, that the struggle will never be overcome. It makes problems seem bigger than they are, making obstacles appear impossible to move. But no amount of darkness can extinguish God's light. No situation is too broken, no heart is too far gone, and no person is beyond redemption. The moment His light enters, the power of darkness is shattered. The lies that once seemed so convincing lose their grip. The fear that once controlled every decision is silenced. The hopelessness that once felt so heavy is lifted. There are times when the world seems overwhelmingly dark, when it feels as though evil is winning, when chaos appears to be taking over. But darkness is never the final word. Even when it feels like the night is endless, the sun always rises. Even when circumstances seem unchangeable, God's power remains constant. His light is not just for moments of peace and joy. It shines even in the hardest battles. It is a light that leads through the storm, that strengthens in times of trial, that gives courage when everything else says to give up. Walking in God's light means choosing to trust in His truth rather than the lies of darkness. It means believing that no matter what the situation looks like, He is still in control. It means rejecting fear, resisting hopelessness, and holding on to faith even when the path is unclear. His light does not promise that there will never be challenges, but it does promise that no challenge will be greater than His power. It does not guarantee a life without trials, but it does guarantee that those trials will never be faced alone. Every person has a choice to remain in darkness or to step into the light. The world offers distractions, temporary comforts, and false promises, but they will never be enough to overcome the darkness. Only God's light can bring true freedom. Only His presence can bring true peace. No matter how far someone has wandered, no matter how deep the shadows may seem, the moment they turn to Him, the darkness begins to fade. His light is always available, always waiting, always powerful enough to overcome whatever stands in its way.